Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Welcome to the 21st episode of the FPL Wire, powered by DreamSetGo. We are recording ahead of Game Week 23. I'm your host, Zofa, and I'm joined, as always, by Twitter stats guru, Big Man Bucket. How's it going, bro?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Zoff. I had a decent game week, 70 points so far, but it kind of feels underwhelming given the scores floating around on Twitter and on other websites. I still have Son remaining, so here's to hoping I get something out of him tonight. Overall, a decent game week. I'm pretty content with how it's gone. Salah and Robertson were the only players who failed to deliver. Other than that, it went well, and the Suchek benching is. It coincided with the Hall yet again. So like that's something I've actually come to expect. So I'm actually mentally prepared for it almost every single week. When I play him, he blanks. When I bench him, he scores. It's something which is inevitable. I
You
think
can
I've
you
played
can
him like for I've played him for the double game week, and other than that, he's been on my bench every single week, and he scored thrice. I think it's been unbelievable.
you can add that to your review. Actually, what I'm
No,
doing with Suchek this week.
that's not happening. I'm sorry, that's not happening. Yeah, Suchek is a word which doesn't exist in my dictionary, so there's no way I'm writing about it in my articles for sure. Yeah.
So,
So how about you, LR? How was your week?
Good week. I've been like doing different things with the captaincy in the past 2 game weeks. It's worked out fairly well. In game week 21, I captained Harvey Barnes. That worked out. It was against the popular Gundogan captaincy that I think everybody went for. And in 22, again, I uh, grew a pair and decided to captain Bruno Fernandes. While everybody, I was scared of Salah. I thought everybody's going to captain Salah. His effective ownership was extremely high. But I was a little worried about Brighton's form, and I was a little worried about Liverpool's form. And I thought they'd face a little difficulty without Mane in that team, even though we know that Salah sort of polarizes and hogs all the points when Mane isn't there. But I just thought Liverpool would struggle a little without Mane. So rolled the dice and it worked out. 76 points, getting close to finally breaking into the 1 million. So yeah, happy days. No complaints. How about you, Zoff? How was your week?
decent week, 72 points with Sun to go, but Sun's just getting two, maybe one at max, so 73 or 74 is where it's going to end up. I got 55 points the week before that, so it's had two small red arrows since we potted last, down to about like 64, 65k now, but still a healthy position going forward. So before we jump in, guys, I just wanted to get this message out there about bench points. So when we opened up on Twitter for questions this morning, the majority of them were asking who to bench, and generally a lot of moaning about bench points. So I just thought that we would put some perspective out there. Like, you guys still have to remember that we are still very much in the middle of a pandemic. So postponements and cancellations are still very much a possibility. Like last game week, we had the likes of Stones, Cancelo, Dyer, etc. benched. Some had all three auto subs come on. Like, the schedule is like no other season. A bench is needed, and we are fortunate to have players like Suchek, Justin, Sufal, who offer high point potential at 5 million, 4.5 million. So a lot of this is hindsight thinking. Like benching Suchek away to Aston Villa was a reasonable call, I think, given Villa's defensive record. Similarly, benching DCL away to United is a reasonable call this week. If DCL hauls this week, so be it. We need to embrace process oriented thinking, not result oriented thinking. We need to stop thinking what might have been. Like, none of us can see the future, and these are 50-50 calls. You can fall on the wrong side of the coin. So, additionally, things are changing so rapidly that we hardly have enough time to process information. Player form is also erratic due to the unique circumstances. The lack of Kane, Vardy, Mane, KDB, etc. plays a part too. We won't normally have this much money to invest. When they're back, it's perfectly fine to convert Suchek to say a seventh attacker. But for now, back your gut and play whoever you think is getting the most points. And if you get it wrong, so be it.
Yeah, I mean, at least you guys have a decision. The people who are whining about points on the bench, you have people like Supal and Suchek to call on instead of, the mighty bench that I have in terms of Keenan Davis, Tarek Mitchell, and Oliver Burke. So, I mean, you need to look at both sides of the coin. And, if I had Stones and Cancelo benched the last game week, and didn't have these good subs to call on, while most of the others who have a good bench did have that. So, when you are really in trouble, this bench is going to help you. So don't really worry about lost bench points. I think it's all psychological. There's the only thing you gain with a strong bench is points and nothing else.
Anything to add, Bakar?
No, I completely agree. It's just something you've got to live with. Given the lack of premium options, almost every FPL manager has 8 options at their disposal. So it makes sense. I personally don't mind leaving points on the bench given the state of play these days. It's just something you've got to live with.
Yeah, and again, I just while we're talking about this, I think it's worth addressing where, I was talking to Luke Sable on Twitter, and he mentioned that Rafinha actually went down in price this game week, and and we realized that this probably happened because he had a flag, but a lot of people actually sold Rafinha because they have 5, 6, 7, 8 million lying in the bank that they don't really know what to do with the money, and there, given Rafinha's performances, there was no reason at all to sell him, given his underlining. So there will be an opportunity to use. I mean, if you have lots of money in the bank, talking meta strategy, when Kane comes up, when De Bruyne comes up, when Vardy is back, it gives you so much flexibility to upgrade to that big hitter with one single move. So it's all right if you have some money lying in the bank. You don't necessarily have to spend it.
Right. Bakar, why don't you introduce our sponsors today?
Yeah, sure. So Dream Set Go is a global portal for fans to gain access to sporting events around the world. Accommodation, flight tickets, hospitality, stadium visits, everything can be tailored exactly to your requirements. They also do celebrity experiences, which include masterclasses with your favorite sports celebrity or something as simple as birthday shoutouts. You can find links to the products in the description below. The FPL Wire is a part of the Fantasy Scout Network, and all stats used in this podcast are taken from the FFS members area. Please sign up if you haven't already.
Also, Dream Set Go is in the midst of tying up with a lot of big clubs at the moment. They've got some exciting offers lined up. So, in case you want access to the hospitality and travel packages, kindly fill up the Google form in the description, your details. There's a lot of good things happening, and you want in on those offers. Just taking you guys through the agenda today. We're going to be starting with Bakar's 3 stats. We're going to be taking a brief look at what's happened the last 2 game weeks. We're going to be looking at the transfer window signings and if any of them are of interest to us. We're going to be looking at the double game weeks that are coming up in 24, 26, and in 27. We're going to be looking in depth at United and Brighton and Hove Albion. After that, we have your standard hot fixtures, captaincy, teams, Q&A. Quick turnaround. So just excuse us for the lack of prep. We're freestyling.
Yep.
All right, Bakar, floor's yours.
Sure. So as always, I have 3 stats for our viewers and listeners. The first stat is regarding Bruno, and I run a comparison analyzing him without Pogba this season and his performances with Pogba this season. So the sample size I use for his games without Pogba are 15 matches, and for the sample size with Pogba, he's played 7 matches this season. He's averaging 25 minutes per chance created without Pogba in the team, as compared to 39 minutes per chance created with Pogba. Similarly, for minutes per big chance created, that drops from 101 without Pogba in the team to 208. So that shows me that he's creating chances at a faster rate with a greater frequency when Pogba isn't around. Similarly, for goal threat, I look at the 2 relevant stats, which are minutes per shot inside the box and minutes per big chance. Minutes per shot inside the box without Pogba is 58. It rises to 78 with Pogba. Minutes per big chance is 111 without Pogba, and that rises to 208 with Pogba. So it's no surprise to see that actually his FPL points per game is nearly double when Bruno is playing without Pogba as compared to with Pogba in the team. His FPL points per game with Pogba is 4.4 in the 7 matches he's played with him. And his FPL points per game is 8.7 without Pogba in the 15 matches he's played with him. So I wrote about this a few weeks ago, and there were a lot of theories floating around whether or not this is just a coincidence or it's happenstance or it's just happening just through sheer luck or something. But the sample size of 7 games is slightly reasonable enough to suggest that there's definitely something going on. I mean, I'm sure Bruno's still a good asset to own regardless of Pogba's presence. But I think the data suggests that his ceiling definitely reduces when Pogba plays. There are a lot of different theories behind this. This could be due to the fact that Pogba likes carrying the ball, which sort of limits Bruno's movement, because Bruno for him to be at his best. He likes players around him who make good runs like Martial, Rashford, which is not always the case with Pogba, who often waltz the ball to himself. Um, this is just something worth keeping in mind whenever you're likely to captain Bruno in the future. Having said that, this trend has only been witnessed recently, and this wasn't the case last season because post restart, when Pogba and Bruno were playing in the same team, Bruno had 5 goals and 4 assists. So the jury's still out in this one, but this is just something which is worth keeping in mind. And why don't you add something to this, Pranil, as a United fan? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think this is one of the few times where I think the stats that you mentioned, they seem more like a coincidence than something that I see as a recurring trend. Because I thought about it, I can't really figure out why these stats are there at the moment. And I'm thinking about the last 2 games that Bruno did play with Pogba. The Fulham game comes to my mind, and the Liverpool game comes to my mind. Now, if you think about the Liverpool game, Bruno had the 2 best chances in that game to finish the game off. If you remember, there was a cross in, and Bruno's goal was really well saved by Alisson, if you remember, in that game. And similarly, against Fulham, also, Bruno was close to the box. He hit the post once or twice, I think, and he had really good chances. And both these games, he was playing with Pogba. I think Pogba makes the team better. So I'd wait to see a bigger sample size when it comes to this particular stat. I'm at the moment leaning on the side of this happens to be more of a coincidence at the moment. And the one game that's been added to your sample size is the Southampton game. Now, that game witnessed a red card in the second minute. That game witnessed an absolutely depleted Southampton side, and that game witnessed very dodgy decisions in the last 30 minutes by Mark Dean. So that game is a clear anomaly. So yeah, I wouldn't look into it as much at the moment.
So Pogba didn't play that game, right?
Nope.
But it was interesting. I think I didn't watch the game, but I think up till 6 till Bruno had only 1 assist. What do you read into that?
Don't know. Again, anomaly, because I saw the highlights. I missed the first half of the game. I saw only the second half of the game. And whenever Shaw was crossing in, Bruno was in the box, but he was just slightly behind. So he drifted away, hoping that the wingback would cross slightly deeper. But he was in and around the box throughout the game. So I wouldn't read too much into it. I think he's been playing in the same position. He's been playing as a 10 pretty much throughout. So I wouldn't read too much into it.
Fair enough.
Fair. So the next one I have is regarding Aston Villa's recent defensive numbers. So I run a comparison from game week 1 to 16, and I compared their numbers to game week 17 to 22. Villa were conceding 6.7 shots inside the box per game till game week 16, according to their season averages, which rose to an alarming 10.8 between game week 17 and 22. Now, bear in mind the sample size between 17 and 22 is 6 games. So it's not as if this has happened just over a small sample size. So this has been happening over 6 games, which is kind of worrying because for shots conceded inside the box, Villa were 5th till game week 16, which have now dropped to 18th for the same stat respectively. For big chances conceded per game, Villa have started conceding big chances at a rate of 2.2 per game as compared to 1.2 earlier. And similarly, their league ranking has dropped from 4th for big chances to 17th big chances conceded. For average XG conceded per game, Villa were 3rd and were conceding 1 average XG per game till game week 16. But that has actually risen to 1.7 over the past 6 games. And now Villa are actually 18th for the same stat. I mean, the numbers were exemplary early on, but it just suggests that, I mean, they've witnessed an alarming decline. And this is a cause for concern for managers who've had defensive assets and you know, the likes of Emi Martinez is owned by a lot of people. So this is just something worth keeping in mind for FPL managers. This might be good for Martinez because he's going to make saves, but the lack of clean sheets might be, a concern for FPL managers.
So the thing is,
you think it's tiredness in the squad?
I think so.
It could be. It's not even that they had too many difficult fixtures. Only the City game was the only difficult fixture over this run. They've had Newcastle, Burnley, Southampton. I mean, those teams aren't exactly high scoring, but they conceded quite a few chances, and they were actually very lucky in the Southampton game to keep a clean sheet. We saw at the end what happened with the offside call. Other than that, they did concede quite a few chances there, and if not for Martinez's heroics, I don't think they would have kept a clean sheet even then as well.
Yeah, somebody actually mentioned this on Twitter, and I think it's worth pointing that out that it's not really lucky to have a really good keeper at your disposal, which helps you keep clean sheets. Now we've just seen the absolute turnaround that Brighton and Hove Albion have had once they've replaced Matt Ryan as the keeper, and you pointed out those stats multiple times in the past few pods, where now they're a clean sheet generating machine from all fart, no poo. They've gone to all poo just because of one crucial upgrade in the keeper spot. So yeah, just thought I'd add that.
And
A good keeper is a good thing. It's not lucky.
Yep, and maybe absence of Lamptey there has helped. Anyway, digressing from the point over here, I think it's a combination of various things for Villa, right? I think maybe right after the players have come back from COVID, it's still maybe easy to manage one game a week, but then once you add like 2 games in 14 days, 4 games in 14 days, that's when it starts adding up, the fatigue
Yeah,
factor.
and Smith is one of those managers who's not rotating his 11 at all. The back five has remained consistent. I mean, the only one spot is getting changed, which is that right-sided midfielder. Outside of that, I think all the other 10 players are playing every game. So yeah, there's a little bit of tiredness, and they're also a pretty press-intensive team. I mean, Watkins and all of that, they're pretty. That's one of the reasons they've been successful this season is because they've been pressing better. So maybe that could be that.
Right. I don't think Martinez is going anywhere for us though.
Yeah, he's a save machine. He's definitely not going anywhere.
Yeah, poor game though, but an anomaly. I think he could have saved 2 out of 3 goals at least in that game against the Hammers.
Yeah, the Lingard ones were the ones he should have saved, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
the third goal especially was actually straight at him, right?
Yeah, it kind of went through his hands.
But yep, it did.
Off day.
So the third stat I have is for Antonio, and this is of particular interest to his owners. I ran a comparison to assess the impact he's had on West Ham's attack this season. So West Ham without Antonio were averaging 8.1 shots inside the box per game. With Antonio, that figure has risen to 9.1. For big chances, that's increased from 1.8 per game to 2 per game with Antonio. And the average XG per game has risen from 1.1 per game to 1.7 per game. I mean, I think it's fair to say that the impact of Antonio on the team is immense, given that the average XG per game increases by almost 55% single-handedly due to his introduction alone. Not only that, no player in the league has recorded more big chances or has a better XGI, which is expected goal involvement, than Antonio since his return from injury. This is why I think he's personally, in my opinion, the go-to forward in the league right now. He's the number one forward to own, in my opinion. I think he's given the lack of options we have with Vardy and Kane not available. I think he is the player to own right now in terms of the forwards.
Yeah, just to add to that, I was just listening to the FML FPL podcast today, and Alon actually quoted a great stat. Since the restart in game week 30, since Antonio's been playing forward for West Ham, his average XG per 90 is around 0.65. Now, he just gave a relative comparison. In their 6 or 7 seasons, Mo Salah and Harry Kane have surpassed that XG per 90 number just once. And Kun's average XG per 90 number is around 6.9 per 90, around 0.69 per 90. So that just shows how undervalued he is. I was confused about what player to get in this week, and that stat absolutely convinced me. Staggering numbers. I think Antonio owners have been incredibly unlucky to not get at least 15 or 20 points more in the last 3 games. I think as a non-owner, I've gotten away with it.
It's just a casual reminder that Bilic used to play him as right back when he was West Ham manager.
And again, he's going to miss a few chances because he's not the best finisher, but he's always getting in good positions, and that's the repeatable skill. So
and he makes the rest of the team play better. I think that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah,
he's always been a stat monster whenever he plays, whenever he's fit. Even in the Project Restart, he was outstatting almost every other player in the league. So when on form, he's an absolute beast. And I really think the way Moyes has his team set up, it kind of like suits Antonio because it makes him the main man with all the other sort of creative players trying to provide and feed him.
Yeah, credit to Moyes. I mean, even the Villa game, I wasn't expecting that result. I was expecting Villa to win that game. But just doubling up on Grealish on that side with Fredericks, masterstroke. It worked out well for him.
Do you see more teams doing that going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think more often than not, Grealish is doubled up on. The only problem with that is now that Barkley's in play, there is another creative outlet that Villa have. So, but more often than not, people are doubling up on Grealish. I mean, very apparent that they need to do that.
Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my friend Hamza for helping me out in my stats as always this week. He works with me for the review as well. So a shout out to him for helping me out in my work. On that note, I'd also like to let you guys know that we have recently started a Patreon page, me, Late Riser and Zoff, for the FPL Wire. Our work continues to be free, and this is just if you want to support us. I'd also like to give a shout out to our newest patrons. In the Jimmy tier, we have Jacob, Shriniket Kale, and in the Omer tier, we have Mikhail Johnson, Nadim Tani, George Kenny, and Mike Jones.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you, guys. Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
support. We totally appreciate it.
Right. Let's move on now to a quick review of what's happened over the last 2 game weeks. I've got the results up here. I think, if I'm not wrong, Brighton and Man City were the only teams to get 6 points over the last 2 fixtures.
Yep. We're going to be talking about Brighton in detail a little later. But anything that stood out to you guys in the past couple of game weeks?
I think the unpredictability of it more so than anything, right? Like you have Everton, they lost 2-0 to Newcastle.
Yeah.
They went on and to beat Leeds, who had beaten Leicester. Just
Yeah, I thought Leeds were unfortunate in that game. In the second half, Leeds were completely dominant against
Olsen
Everton.
did a great job. I think if
Olsen did a great
Pickford
job.
was in goal, they would have scored a couple more.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Similarly, Newcastle winning away to Everton and then losing at home to Palace. That game was a bit of a surprise to me as well. I thought they'd win the Palace game.
Yeah, I didn't expect Palace to beat Wolves either, and then Wolves go and beat Arsenal. Well, Arsenal had the red card, so mitigating circumstances there.
Worth pointing that out though, because I was looking at the highlights of the Wolves Arsenal game. Arsenal were completely all over Wolves in that first half of the game. Just shows that Wolves have deteriorated as a team. I thought Arsenal could have been up by 3 or 4 goals. Bukayo Saka, I think, is probably one of the most underpriced assets in the game right now. He could have had a brace in the first 30 minutes. They were that good. So just wanted to point that out, that the Wolves Arsenal result is an anomaly. Arsenal were really good, and I think they got hard done by that absolute shit show of a Luis red card. I mean, the guy was trying to take his foot away from the tackle and he gets red carded for that. So yeah. Also on the Newcastle note, Wilson is topping all the relevant stats in the past 2 game weeks: shots in the box, XG, shots taken, etc. So I've never really considered him as a pick, but is Bruce going a little more attacking now? What do you guys think?
They have a new assistant manager, right? I forgot his name. So they were
Just a point to make on that one. He's recorded 4 big chances in the Everton game. Other than that, his numbers aren't that good. So that game is a bit of an anomaly. And in the previous week's review, I did mention that Newcastle have only created 4 or more big chances twice this season, and twice it has happened only against Everton. So for some reason, their numbers against Everton have been really good.
Yeah. Zoffan, we were talking during that Everton game, and it seemed like Everton sort of just assumed that they'd walked that game. Don't you think? They were a little lackluster and casual. And Dean wasn't on it. He had a lot of wayward crosses in that game as well. So that's something that...
And Richarlison was very poor.
Yeah. I was on the Everton forums also, and they've been asking for a Richarlison drop for a while now. He's not been playing really well.
Another thing that stands out is the battle near the top. I think now Sheffield United are no longer considered whipping boys. I think they gave City a good fight. They beat United. They beat West Brom. But I think maybe too little too late. The relegation battle with Brighton picking up all these results now, I think it looks pretty clear.
Yeah, it does. But did you see Parker's reaction when he was asked if he thinks the relegation battle is over? It's like there's 17 games more to go, and their season isn't going to be defined by these games against the big teams. It's going to be defined against middling opposition. So he's pretty hopeful. And I'm sure there's a bit of momentum at Sheffield United as well,
Yeah.
So when it comes to these 2 teams, I think West Brom are pretty hopeless. But Fulham and Sheffield United, when it comes to their mentality at least, I don't think they've given up in terms of, fighting for relegation. I think they're far from giving up at the moment.
Absolutely. I think we also need to calibrate our thinking on West Ham a little bit. West Ham are a top side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Their XG numbers have been really good of late. And similarly, the defense this season has actually been decent. The likes of Soufal, Creswell particularly. Creswell has often been overlooked, but he's been creating chances at a very good clip, particularly when he plays left back. His numbers this season have been skewed due to the fact that He's played some, I think, 7 or 8 games as a left center back as part of the back three. But other than that, whenever he's been playing left back, his numbers have been very good. And only Shaw and Robertson have created more chances than him this season. So I mean, he's another one who's been great value. He was actually top scoring defender.
He is now.
At some point last week. He still might be. I'm not sure.
He's him and Diaz are tied on 94.
Yeah, and he hasn't really kind of got the attention that he deserves.
Zoff, we didn't talk about your new manager on the first 2 games. Impressions there?
So far, so good. I like the way he's coming across in the press conferences, but today is really the acid test, right? I would have liked to pod it after that thing, but we just don't have enough time with the short turnaround. But I feel pretty confident going into today.
Yes. I'm happy to see the performance, and I'm happy to see back-to-back starts for Hudson-Odoi. I think he's been your best player in these 2 games as well. Absolute quality. And I think, do you like the system that he's implementing? 2 wing backs very high up, 2 inside 10s and a striker, 2 midfielders, 3 at the back. I think getting Aspie in the team is also quite important. I think that's a good move from him because he's getting a leader. He's been a leader for the past 3 or 4 years, and he's getting him into the starting 11, which I think helps in terms of pushing the team, somebody who's vocal, etc.
I think it does, like that. And it also gives an opportunity for my FPL favorite Marcos Alonso to get back into the team. So anything that gets Alonso playing as wing back, I'm all for it.
Do you think he supersedes Chilwell in that position?
I think it's going to depend on opposition. Because obviously Alonso...
Because Burnley...
Yeah. Burnley like a deep block, right? Against your deep blocks, your Alonso's pretty much another centre forward.
Yeah. And he wanted somebody to head the ball against, right? Also in the box, because tall, big guys in Burnley.
Precisely.
Just one thing. Are you guys a little worried about Villa's little dip in form? I mean, they looked to have been lucky to won that game against Villa, against Southampton, and then against West Ham also. Any worry there?
To an extent, but I want to see it with a normalized schedule.
All right, because the next 2 games aren't exactly easy either. Right? There's Arsenal and Brighton, who are a team in form as well. So I'm just wondering if there's a dip in form. Watkins is still getting big chance for big chance.
Yeah, his numbers are great. I own him and he's doing well. Grealish is creating chances at a decent clip. He's on penalties as well. I don't think El Ghazi put in a decent performance yesterday. So I think Grealish is going to keep penalties. I won't be selling if I own, but yes, there is a slight concern that their numbers aren't as good as they were earlier, but I'm still delighted that Watkins is getting, chances every game, even though he tends to miss most of them, but still, I don't mind that.
Yeah, worth mentioning, they have probably going to have Runarsson in goal, their third choice keeper, with Ryan injured, Leno suspended, and he's not very good.
Yeah, while I'm talking about Chelsea, which defender would you recommend if you were picking one? Because I see a lot of people who are looking to get rid of James, Chilwell,
Rudiger.
They have Sheffield United and Newcastle in the next 2. So there are a lot of FPL managers who are actually interested in the Chelsea defender. What are your thoughts?
See, now the thing is with Champions League coming around, Thiago Silva is not going to be able to play every game. So and Zuma is now carrying injury issues. So I think Rudiger at 4.5 is a great buy.
Yeah, I mean, despite the numbers that Chelsea have in Thomas Tuchel does seem to be dominating position. You have Rudiger at 4.5 and then you have a Luke Shaw at 0.4 million more. We're going to be talking about United later, but I feel like he's just a far superior pick in that price bracket, which is why I just can't get behind the Rudiger pick. I think there's a massive upside with Shaw that can't be ignored in the similar price bracket.
I agree.
And just while we're on that point.
So before we move on to player data, I also have to give a shout out to Brighton. They're finally delivering on the defensive numbers. So while we look at our captain picks, I don't think Brighton should really consider whipping boys anymore.
Yep. I think there are a couple of other picks, things that I want to discuss. Both of us, I think all 3 of us. Bakar, did you also sell Bamford for DCL?
Yes, we did.
I was one of the unlucky ones, yes.
Yeah, I think all 3 of us made that mistake. Zoff and me are back on Bamford already. I mean, we didn't wait more than a week. Have you gotten Bamford back as well?
No, I didn't. I had DCL for the game yesterday.
What's your strike force right now? Watkins, Antonio, and DCL.
Yeah.
Fair enough. You have to hold DCL until 24 for a probable.
He has a likely double coming up. I'm kind of happy with Watkins, and Antonio, as I said, is basically the best forward in my opinion right now. So I don't really see where I can go with Bamford.
Yeah, for me it was easier. I had to just upgrade Davis, right? So it made more sense.
Yeah, just a couple of other things that just in terms of eye test that struck to me is Sterling's performance. I think he could have easily had a hat trick against Burnley. He was incredibly unlucky. I think people who punted there deserve more. And I'm actually looking at getting him back because he's getting in more and more goal scoring positions at the moment. So that's something that's just
You'd have to
interesting me.
lose a defender, right? You have three right now.
I'm looking at wildcarding in 25 right now, right? So that's the sort of thinking because I have a triple defense at the moment. I'm looking at converting one, maybe two defenders into attack just because of the fixtures. Let's see what happens there. I mean, it's absolutely stupid to lose defenders from a team that kept clean sheets in 9 out of the last 10 games. So uh, I'm worried about that. But just the template is so strong at the moment. The pool of players is so small at the moment, and I'm at 1 million, right? So I need to be taking some calculated gambles to make some progression. If I, if I'm still thinking of getting into the top 100k or the top 50k, I need to be taking some aggressive gambles against the template. And you and me were talking about this, and you were like, you were happy that you took the gamble for a Bruno Fernandes rather than a DCL because you're like, it's better to gamble and pray for a big hitter who's being ignored rather than somebody like DCL who's a more left-sided pick. So I think I'm just thinking about teams because right now, outside of United, City, Liverpool, the three good attacking teams are Leeds United, West Ham, and Aston Villa, and that's pretty much the pool of players that you have. Outside of that, who do you have? You have Madison Barnes, and that's about it at the moment. So it's very difficult to break the template at the moment. So there needs to be an opportunity, but there isn't any at the moment. I think one team that could break this template is Brighton who Albion, especially if they have a double game week in 26. But outside of that, do you see anything changing?
Not much. In fact, let's have a look. Since you brought up Sterling, let's have a look at the player stats from these last two game weeks. Bruno comes out on top, but his XG non-penalty is not very high. It's only 0.43, which is like, about the same level as Fraser. Gabriel Jesus is up there, and as you mentioned, Wilson is up there now. Salah is actually in fourth. A lot of people have been hating on Salah naturally for his blanks and all that stuff. We have Marshall and Cavani who are up there. DCL, Fraser, Bamford, Sterling's in there. I think he's only second to Jesus in the stats. And then you have Shaw and Wan-Bissaka. The fullbacks and United have suddenly become a force.
Yeah, I think those numbers have also a little bit lopsided, right?
Because of the 9-0.
Because of the 9-0 and because of, I mean, Southampton played kids and were 10 men down in the second minute, right? So I wouldn't look into those numbers too heavily at the moment. But Fraser top for big chances created and for chances created in the last two games is something that just makes me raise my eyebrow. I mean, is this guy coming back in form? That's probably one of the reasons why Wilson is also getting a lot of big chances because they have that little bit of a interlink.
Absolutely.
Outside of that, Bamford is getting a lot of big chances as well. Gabriel Jesus in form, 2 goals in 2 games, and he's getting a lot of shots in the box right now. He's top for non-pen XG in the last 2 games as well. So that's something I've clocked. And one other person I want to mention is Cavani. His numbers in the last 2, 4, 6 games, his underlyings are extremely strong at the moment. So if somebody is looking for a left-sided punt, there's an opportunity there. He's just flagged at the moment. There's a little bit of a knock, and I feel like Ole is going to manage his minutes. But outside of that, I like that as a punt.
Yeah, he's actually top for big chances among forwards in the past 4 games. His numbers are good, but then again, the game time is the worry.
Yeah,
because
all this talk about people being impatient with Mo Salah right now is absolutely rubbish at the moment. I mean, it does my head. I mean, his underlines are incredibly good. I thought he was a little bit unlucky to blank as well against Brighton Hove Albion. I mean, if you guys are thinking about selling Salah, his fixtures in the midterm are actually quite good, and he's got a pretty decent looking double game week in 26 as well. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I won't sell either. I mean, he had a glorious opportunity in the 3rd minute, I think it was, and he unfortunately couldn't convert his chance. And I mean, I think it could have been a very different game had Liverpool scored early.
Absolutely.
On that note, Klopp mentioned that Mane should be back for the City game. I was just looking at his post-match conference quotes. He didn't train, but he's looking likely like he could feature in the City game. So after the City game, we were obviously expecting Mane to be back, and I think that bodes well for Liverpool and Salah in general. And Jota is about 3 or 4 game weeks away as well. It's just something worth mentioning at the moment.
Right. So let's move on to the transfer window.
All right, I think we'll just go player by player, and if you guys have any thoughts to add, just mention that. We have Diagne who joined West Brom, right, as a 6 million
Yes.
forward.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think neither of
He's
us,
already
none of
notched
us.
attacking returns, I think. I remember he got an assist or something already.
Yeah. But I
Yeah.
think the striker bracket is so strong at the moment.
Not from
With the
West Brom.
I mean, the strikers from Villa, West Ham, and Leeds United are dominating the bracket. So he needs to do a lot more for us to take him seriously. Same for Willian Jose, the striker from Sociedad who joined Wolves. Anybody interested at all?
Nope.
I
Too
don't
early.
think so.
Too early.
I
Too
agree.
early.
And it's too
I
much
need to see
competition.
more.
The most interesting one is actually the next one, Ozan Kabak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
5 million pool defender. If I think this is such a crucial signing in terms of how it could change the ecosystem for the Liverpool picks, because right now they're struggling because they're playing two of their best midfielders as their centre backs. And if Kabak takes away some of that defensive duty, it means that Hendo moves into midfield. I think that sort of changes the entire course of the Liverpool team and they start looking more like themselves again. And so it depends on, and I've spoken to a few Liverpool fans as well. Out of the two that they've signed, Kabak and Davies, Kabak looks like the more likelier one to break into the team. I think outside of even him just being an asset, I think it will increase the attraction to the Liverpool wing backs or Mane or Salah being good picks in the second half of the season.
Agree. Minamino?
I'm quite interested in terms of what happens there because I thought he had a good game against Palace and then we didn't see him at all. He's got decent pedigree in the Champions League as well. So, and Southampton are an attacking team, and I think KWP isn't too far away from returning as well. So, if the Southampton get their players fit, they have a pretty good double game week in 26 and potentially a double game week in 27 as well. So, people are going to be looking at Saints assets pretty soon, I reckon. That's why he's of interest.
We saw Josh King make his debut also against Leeds.
Nah, I think he's good for the team, but not interested. Bakar?
Yeah, I was saying that personally, I'm not interested in Minamino. I'd like to see how he plays, but the way Southampton play, the bulk of their chances are likely to fall to Ings and Adams. So I don't really think he's going to get a much of a chance for FPL in terms of where he's going to play as probably a right midfielder, right-sided midfielder. I don't think I'd be going there.
Fair enough, but I thought he'll be signed as a sort of a backup for Adams. I expect him to play in the two forward positions rather than like.
It could be worth noting if he plays out of position.
Like Walcott did.
He's a midfielder, right? In FPL, I keep thinking he's a striker.
Yeah, he's a midfielder.
Right, so Josh Willock. Who did he sign for Newcastle, right?
Yes, Willock signed for Newcastle. Just on that note, Almiron has been looking pretty bright based on the eye test. But I think they have to do a little more for us to get interested in them at the moment.
Maitland-Niles is an interesting one.
Yeah, there was some talk that he could play in midfield. If that happens, maybe interested, but he plays for West Brom. So it'll take again a lot for us to get interested.
Yep. What about this Josh Majak? I remember seeing him in that Sunderland documentary, right? Who has he signed for?
He's signed for Fulham as a striker, and I actually quite like that because Fulham lack a striker at the moment. I mean, they're playing a lot of good football, but they don't have a really good striker up front. And I saw the documentary. I've been talking to a few fans because I just tweeted about Maja, and they were like, his conversion rate is really, really good. He doesn't need many chances to put the ball in the back of the net. So this is actually somebody who I'm interested in because I think Fulham can play a decent bit of football. And if Fulham they've got a pretty decent run of fixtures in the next 4 game weeks. So if they get a result or two, I think momentum is a thing, and could be potentially interested here.
I just wonder what's happened to Mitrovic. I mean, everyone expected him to have a decent season, 15 goals, where most of us thought he'd score like around 15 goals. He doesn't seem to have Parker's confidence. I mean, it's very surprising to see that he's in and out. Sometimes he doesn't even come on from the bench. Sometimes he's playing. It's very random.
It's a system, right?
They've evolved to a better team without Mitrovic playing, I think.
Exactly. What used to happen earlier is when Mitro used to play, there one template was get the ball on the wings, cross to Mitro. They've evolved into a much better team
creating more
without him.
well.
And they need people who press up front, and Mitro doesn't do that. So that's the problem with Mitro.
Up next, Jay Liggs. What a debut.
What a debut! 2 goals. I'm actually very, very, very happy for him. I think he's a good player. I think he gets a lot of stick on Twitter and all of that because of his off-field personality. He's not quite Man United level, but make no mistake, he's a pretty good player. And I think West Ham is just a good fit for him. In terms of being interested, I'm a little worried because they do have a lot of good players behind Antonio at the moment. They got Bowen, Fornals, uh, uh, Ben Rama also, who's been picking
Lanzini.
up as Lanzini. So I don't know if he's going to be nailed at the moment. So I wouldn't jump immediately. It's a waiting match.
Right, I think these big fish in a small pond players, right? Like Barkley.
Yeah, exactly.
One player we
Yeah.
did actually forgot to put on here, Odegaard. What do you think about him?
Needs to break into the team first, right? I haven't seen
Exactly.
much of him. He comes with a very high reputation, but haven't seen much. So yeah, anything to add, guys?
Yeah, I've just heard great things about Odegaard. Personally, I was just chatting to a friend the other day, and he was mentioning how Odegaard could be a decent budget option coming up. But for that to happen, he needs to break into the first team first, and we need to see a bit more of him. I mean, Smith Rowe did a pretty good job in the number 10 role. So if he starts playing there, then he could be a decent option to consider.
But in general, it was a bit of an underwhelming window, right? None of these guys you can say are real game changers.
If you had to pick 2 players who you think might become options out of this lot, come on,
Kabak and
stick
Lingard.
Kabak and Lingard. Bakar?
I'd say, yeah, I'd agree. Kabak and Lingard as well.
All right. I'll go with Lingard and Maja. Just a gut feel about Josh Maja. Just because I've seen the document. It's pretty good there.
I think King also, like if we have an injury to DCL or someone, you could have him playing up top.
Yeah, and the price is 5.5 million, right? I mean, that's a completely different price bracket to the 7 million strikers at the moment. So
Apparently, he had a really poor season in the championship.
He did.
no goals. No goals in the championship this season.
Right. Now, let's start talking about the doubles.
All right, we thought it'd be a good idea to just look at the fixtures in 24, 26, and 27. Just a note of warning, this is what is likely to happen in 24, 26, and 27 based on the FA Cup results that we have and based on the FA Cup uh, permutations and combinations. And the FA Cup games are next midweek. So even when it comes to podding, we're doing our podcast next Thursday and not next Tuesday because we'll have a lot more clarity in terms of what the doubles are going to be or what the doubles might look like in 24, 26, and 27. And this is, again, if you're not following Ben Crellin, you really, really need to. And I think at this stage, it's important to just briefly overlook this because it involves a lot of macro strategy as well. All 3 of us, haven't used our wild card. All 3 of us have our bench boost chip still pending. And Zoff and me have been chatting, and actually we're looking to take different directions in terms of what we intend on doing. And I'm currently at the moment looking at wildcarding in 25 with the intention of bench boosting in 26. And Zoff is looking at making his way to 26 without a wildcard and then wildcarding out of after the bench boost. So Zoff, what's your thinking there?
Right. So let's just walk through first on game week 24. We are expecting doubles for Man City and Everton. Man City's Arabic account recently tweeted something that there's a game to be rescheduled, so that might be the Everton game. I think this will, if it is going to be announced, it'll be announced after the FA Cup results, so that they know exactly what fixtures have to be scheduled now. So what interests me here, right, is now that, like you discussed, the template is quite strong. Almost all of us have 3 Man City players, a couple of West Ham players, a couple of Villa players, etc., Leeds players. So a lot
Son.
of Son. So like, a lot of these guys are likely going to have that. United players, right? These guys are going to have the double in 26 from the looks of it. So I was just wondering, is there necessarily a need to wildcard to get these players in? So let's have a look at the next graph. Now these are the permutations from VRogue on Twitter about which teams are likely to have the double. So most likely Man City and Wolves will have a double. So we'll have 3 players from Man City. Liverpool
In game week 26, just worth mentioning.
absolutely in 26. Liverpool versus Chelsea, we expect them to have a double as well. Burnley, Leicester, both teams are still in the FA Cup. This should be a double as well. Sheffield United, if they beat their FA Cup opponents, them and Villa will have a double. Spurs, if they beat Everton, Southampton beat Wolves, so it could be doubles here as well. United have to beat West Ham, then Palace and United would have a double too. So I think it's very easy to get a team of doublers.
United West Ham is actually a little bit unpredictable, I reckon.
Right, because especially you don't know what lineups teams will be playing now, right? Because they had so many fixtures close by. You never know which players will be rested, etc. So now here's where it gets interesting. Now, if Everton get knocked out of the FA Cup, they'll probably still have the double in 26 because they have fixtures still to be rescheduled. Now, Leeds versus Fulham is the only confirmed fixture we have for game week 29 so far. But that doesn't matter because Leeds still have a fixture to be scheduled against Southampton. That might still drop in game week 26. So I think it's quite easy to get at least 11 doublers. So it's quite easy. You can probably get there without transfer. But even 15, it could be quite easy, right? So now while doing that, you're probably going to have somebody like Bamford or Grealish as your 8th attacker. So you're going to end up with a bit of a lopsided system, and just about then you're going to have the likes of Kane, KDB coming back. So it might be useful to wildcard out of this into those players and go with you don't have to have a second keeper, don't have to have such a strong attack after the bench boost.
Well, what's your bench looking like right now, sir? Just so that we can present the argument and present the both sides of the coin.
Right. So I'll show you my team later. Right now I've got on my bench for this week Foster, Calvert-Lewin, Ruben Dias, and Soufal.
And what do you intend on bench boosting with? What's the thinking?
So the thing is now, let's assume that let's say Man United beat West Ham, right? So I'll have about 3 or 4 transfers now going into it. So I can easily let's say Souček to a what's his name, Rafinha. I can do a Souček to a Rafinha. I can easily do an Antonio to a Watkins. I can do a Soufal to a Dallas. And goalkeeper, so it's very easy now. You can do sideways price movements for the same price. The only tricky thing possibly might be Kane. If you have to get Kane in, that might require a bit more surgery because if your funds are really spread out.
Yeah, and Spurs have the standout fixtures in game week 26. That's looking likely. They're likely to have Burnley at home and perhaps Southampton as well. So those fixtures are looking good on paper.
And there's always a decision you have to make on a bench boost, right? Do you prioritize your players, your big hitters, or do you prioritize spending around your squad?
Exactly. I mean, I'm in a very similar situation to you. I'm keeping it flexible at the moment. Initially, I planned to wildcard in 25 as well. I'm still open to the idea, but depending on how the fixtures pan out, I'll make a call based on that. But whatever I do will be basically based on the fact that I want to maximize my bench boost in 26. So if I can maximize the bench boost with 1 or 2 hits, I might not use the wild card, but if it's taking more than that to happen, then I'll just probably think about wild carding more seriously.
So what I want
just thinking about meta strategy. Let's say you're 3 or 4 key players away from your bench boost in 26, and I'm not talking about the bench fodder. I'm talking about the main guys. Let's say you can't afford a Kane in that 26 bench boost, and it requires a -8 or -12. Are you open? What's the benefit of saving the wildcard after 27? Having a thinner bench?
2 reasons.
I don't think I'd be open to -8 or 12. I'd wildcard personally in that situation.
Zoff, you were saying?
So I think there are multiple reasons. So ultimately, there might be some fixture swings later on, right? So the last 4-5 weeks of the season, you have the top 4 race might open. You never know. West Ham might be in the top 4 race by then. Chelsea might have dropped out. There's a lot more incentive and a lot more fatigue, injuries to be able to get players in. So, but there's also 2 sides of the argument here, right? Now, with the Champions League coming in, do you necessarily want a thin bench?
Exactly.
So the 2 sides of the coin to consider, but at the same time, I don't really want to have that money on the second keeper sitting around. I don't want a third sub, a 8th attacker who's as expensive as say a Bamford. You can still get a good bench, your Souček costs 5, Soufal costs 4.5, 4.6. You have the Brighton defense at 4.1, 4.2. You can still get a decent bench out of these guys without, and there are going to be doubles later on, right? Due to postponements, FA Cup progression. Maybe you can use a wildcard to exploit those doubles. So, because what's happening now, you're seeing a lot of guys who are bench boosted in game week 19. They're very heavy benches now. And it's just the way that things have coincided that Kane, De Bruyne are not in the picture, so they don't need the money. But supposedly they'd be hamstrung right now.
That's precisely why we have so many Rafinha, Souček, Dallas benchers week in, week out.
Exactly.
Correct.
So my point is, it might be useful to wildcard out of that structure.
Agreed. And I don't think it's a clear-cut decision, right? I think all 3 of us are in agreement that there's enough pros and cons and both sides of the argument. I think even if you're wildcarding after 26 per se, I think you're going to have two playing players on your bench instead of four. So you're probably spending about a million and a half more than if you wildcarded earlier. Just presenting that argument, and also for the listeners that are already wildcarded, if you're planning for the game week double game week 26, go to Ben Perlin's Twitter, download this table, and just the teams to target that we pointed out. You should definitely have a triple city at the moment, and you should have the right triple city. The double game week that City looks likely to have in 24 is against Spurs and Everton. The double game week in 26 looks to be against West Ham and Wolves, and in 27 their double game week reads like United and Southampton. Now, that's also one of the reasons why I'm looking to wildcard, because currently I have a triple city defense. I'm looking at getting at least one city attacker and a double defense, or maybe two attackers and one defense. I want to switch that up. I want to bet on the city attack. Secondly, the team to target for the double game week in terms of attack, I think Leeds have a really good double game week. And it looks likely they have Aston Villa and Southampton at home. So from an attacking standpoint, I quite like that double game week. Southampton is somebody who's going to be in the picture as well. Count game week 26 because they have a double-double. They have a double game week in 26 where they play Everton and Leeds or Spurs, and a double game week in 27 where they play Sheffield United and Manchester City. The other two or three teams worth targeting, Aston Villa, because one of the double game week games is against Leeds United, and the other is against Spurs or Everton or Sheffield United. Again, that's one of the reasons why I'm looking at wildcarding as well, because I've got a double City, double Villa defense at the moment. And like Bakar mentioned, right, their defensive numbers are going towards a downward trend. So I'm looking at switching my double Villa defense into a double Villa attack, because I think there's value there, and they're one of the best attacks in the league at the moment. Outside of that, Spurs is somebody worth attacking. Kane is going to be in play at that time. So, the double game week is against Burnley and one of Aston Villa, Fulham or Southampton. So you like that double game week for Spurs as well.
And Palace right after, I think you have to keep that in mind also, right? Whoever you get for 26, if they have a good fixture in 27, that's a big bonus.
Yeah, I'd also like to add to that the two other teams that I personally like for the game week, which might be likely. If Brighton manage to get a double, they'll have West Brom and Newcastle, and I think those two fixtures could be really profitable for the owners of the managers who own their defenders. I think they could possibly keep two clean sheets here. Maybe even the likes of Trossard could come into the picture. I also like Leicester's double, actually. Arsenal at home and Burnley away. I don't think they're too tough. I think this might be kind of they might be overlooked because the fixtures kind of look deceptive. But I like Arsenal at home and Burnley away for Leicester. I think these are kind of the games that might suit them.
The team that I'm most interested in the FA Cup is that Leicester-Brighton game, because if Brighton get that double, I think they offer the perfect trio of cheap, good players. I love Sanchez as a 4.4 million keeper. Exactly. He's a lock-in if Brighton have a double game week in 26. So I'm hoping that they get a double game week, because I think that's where the bench boost will be focused towards. And also, since I'm looking to differentiate from the template, not many people own Brighton players at the moment. So I'm looking to switch there. That's what I'm hoping for at the moment.
Right. So.
And the fixtures after 26 are decent as well. If you look at the overall picture, they have Newcastle, Southampton, Leicester. I mean, those fixtures aren't too bad over the next 4 or 5 games. They're decent games.
Yep. Any thoughts on any triple captain candidates? I think Spurs 26 is a decent shout.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think Kane
I think Kane and Son look likely.
Son are a good shout. But what I must emphasize is, as much as possible, try to save your transfer this week. Because with the FA Cup results, we'll have a lot more clarity by the time we pod next week. I think we'll be in a better position to know who has the doubles, etc. So unless you have any pressing issues, try to save your transfer this week.
All right. And if, like me, you're leaning towards wildcarding in 25 and you're looking for a 2-game week punt, monitor what Chelsea are doing very closely today, because the next two fixtures are really good. I think they have Sheffield United and Newcastle. I just earmarked 4 teams that have good fixtures in the next 2 game weeks. West Ham have Fulham and Sheffield United. You need to get Antonio if you don't have him in your team, because he's not likely to get a double game week as well. So you can wildcard out of the West Ham assets in 25. United have Everton at home and West Brom away. Again, good punts there for the taking. Arsenal have Aston Villa away and Leeds at home. I like that, especially for the Leeds home fixture. And like we've seen, Aston Villa's defensive numbers have been taking a beating. So I won't be surprised to see Arsenal put a couple past Villa as well. I like Saka as a pick. And like I mentioned earlier, Chelsea have Sheffield United away and Newcastle at home. So these are the four teams that have good funds where you should be looking at if you made up your mind about wildcarding in 25.
Right. So let's move on from this. We discuss this more in detail once these doubles are confirmed. Let's talk about Man United.
We've spoken about them quite a bit. Bruno is in most teams and is going to be in most teams. But I think Shaw is one of the best value defender picks out there. I think if people are in the market for a defender right now, he should be in your top 1, 2, 3 list. In the last 6 matches, I just posted the stat on Twitter today, he's created 19 chances. And that's top for all defenders. And the second best defender is Robertson, who's created 9 chances. Such is the drastic difference in terms of how superior Shaw is as an asset in terms of chance creation. And he's just 4.9 million. We've been posting decent underlying numbers when it comes to defense. We're in the best 5 defenses for shots in the box, as well as big chances conceded in the last 4 matches as well. So he's just a really good pick. A little bit of worry in terms of people thinking that he's not potentially nailed. The last game that Alex Telles played against Sheffield United, he was terrible. He was miserable. And Shaw is very important to us tactically. This is the fourth or fifth time I'm mentioning this in the pod. He is important for ball progression on that left-hand side. So I see him being as nailed as most of the City defenders, for example. He'll get the odd rest, but he's first choice. I wouldn't worry about rotation at the
I I agree with that. Yeah. Personally, I'm looking to buy Shaw for my team as well. I have Robertson, so I'm probably looking to sell him given that he has City and then Leicester in the next two. And there's a chance that I might wildcard in 25. So I don't want Robertson at that price. And I think that Shaw is going to be my go-to target. Um, I was looking at the numbers, and over the season, he's only second to Robertson for chances created. And that's despite the fact that he's almost played like 600 less minutes. So his minutes per chance created ratio per season has been far superior to any other defender. But it's just that he's been kind of going under the radar because of the fact that he often tends to get injured, and there are managers who haven't really invested in him due to the threat of Telles, which is why he hasn't got the attention. But I think this might be the right time to invest in him. United's defensive numbers are decent. They aren't great, but I won't say they're terrible either. So I think there's a very good chance that he can haul, because I was looking at the bonus accumulation numbers as well, and he has the best bonus accumulation numbers of all United defenders. So whenever United are to keep a clean sheet, he's very likely to be among those who get a bonus. So that makes him kind of an explosive option. Other than that, Bruno is the obvious one which most people own. We've talked about Cavani. Rashford, if you own him, I'd suggest keeping. I don't really see a reason to sell him ahead of his run of fixtures. And yeah, Martial has been quietly doing well as well. So for those with Martial, they can keep him. And I'm sure you'd like to quote a stat here, late riser from Adam Hopcroft.
I just read Adam Hopcroft's tweet before coming on, and I was absolutely shocked to see that stat. Since game week 13, Anthony Martial has the most points amongst all strikers in FPL. And I need to double check and triple check that stat because it doesn't seem as obvious to me. But I mean, that's true. I still prefer Cavani. I mean, to him as a pick at the moment. He showed some signs of form against kids that were against 9 men and against kids against Southampton. So I wouldn't read too much into that. I at the moment think Cavani is the better asset. Just need to monitor whether he's got a knock or not. I think he's a very good punt for the next 2 or 3 game weeks for people looking to bet against the template.
So look at this table now. This is for the last 4 game weeks. Shaw's actually created more chances than Bruno. 13 chances created to his 12. You mentioned Rashford, no need to sell. His numbers are quite poor. In the last 5 appearances, he's created 1 chance. And he's had just 3 shots on the box. To compare that, like Martial has had 10 shots in the box. And so Rashford, I do think he's on a downward curve. His like expected goal involvement is only 0.82.
He's Rashford epitomizes what Manchester United is as a team in terms of unpredictable Jekyll and Hyde. if you saw the United game in the FA Cup against Liverpool, Rashford was world class. He had such a good game, and then the next game he was absolutely rubbish against Sheffield United. And that's what United are as a team, not consistent. Jekyll and Hyde. Sometimes they're great if they're up for it, and sometimes they're just not up for it. And that's what Rashford is a pick. So he can be frustrating as a player to own, but if you own Rashford, you need to be in there for the long haul because he's unpredictable. You don't know when he's going to come up.
The other thing worth noting is that his numbers on the left, when he plays on the left, are actually far better than when he plays on the right. And some of the numbers you quoted off there, they include matches when he was playing on the right. And I don't really think he's as good an asset when he plays on the right. So I just keep for the upcoming fixtures. I think he's worth keeping. I won't be selling him particularly before the West Brom game, because I see United scoring 3 minimum in that fixture alone.
Just worth pointing out also, if people are who have already used their wildcard and are looking to buy a mid-term asset, who might have a double game week in 26 as well. This is why we're talking about United, because they've got Everton at home, West Brom away, Newcastle at home, and they double in 26 with Chelsea away and Crystal Palace away. So that's a decent run of fixtures to invest in. That's what we're talking
about. Let's move on to the next team, Brighton.
Bakar, you want to talk about their underlying numbers in defense?
I've been rambling about them since the past 3 weeks. I at the cost of repeating myself, I'll just say that at home they're second for expected goals conceded this season. Over the past 4 games, they've conceded just the 2 big chances, which came against Liverpool. Before that, they'd conceded none in 3. So their defensive numbers, the fact that they've kept like 4 clean sheets in 4 games isn't out of the blue. It's they actually agree with the stats, agree with the clean sheets that have been kept. Their numbers are in sync with the fact that they just conceded a few goals. So that suggests to me that their defense is worth keeping an eye on. And in my opinion, they're one of those teams I never feel comfortable captaining a player against, but I just did it this week because Salah was without Mane. And honestly, if Mane was playing, I don't even think I would have considered Salah. So I fell into the trap. I watched the first 30 games, the first 30 minutes of the game last night, and I realized my mistake straight away. So that was unfortunate. And the fact that you've already mentioned that Sanchez is a far superior goalkeeper to Ryan, who was underperforming. He was in the worst 3 for actual variance between actual goals conceded and expected goals conceded. So that's a huge upgrade. There's a lot to like about that Brighton defense. Historically, what used to happen with their defense was that every single game, whenever you speak to Brighton fans, they used to say that they under Potter this season particularly, they were dominating most games, but there used to come a moment where there was a slight lapse of concentration, and they used to give away 1 big chance every game, and that used to be fatal. But that isn't happening anymore. And even if they are conceding chances, they have a better goalkeeper in goal who's actually preventing them from going in. So the volume of shots they used to concede was low anyways, which is just further evidence of the fact that this hasn't happened overnight. They're actually a decent defense.
If we were to invest in a defender, Dunk versus White, what's your thinking?
I actually want to throw out Burns' numbers over there. He's had 3 shots in the box, 1 shot on target, decent goal involvement. Ben White's also had 3 shots in the box. But if you can just allow me to skip ahead now to Leandro Trossard. His numbers have been pretty good. He's got 2.01 expected goal involvement over the last 4 matches.
I think he's a really, really good player as well. I mean, he's looking like a punt I'm willing to take in game week 26 if they have a double. And I think what's also transformed the Brighton team, which has not been spoken about, is actually the involvement of Pascal Gross. He's starting in that team and he's looking really good and he's playing well. And I don't think he's a good FPL asset. I think Trossard is a much superior FPL asset. But I think he's making that team better because he's been putting in some top performances in that Brighton team, which is helping them click.
13 did you see? Created.
Yeah, he's a quality player. We've seen him. I mean, he has proven
pedigree. In his debut season, I remember we all had him at 5 million or whatever. He was amazing.
Yeah, creating chances for fun. So yeah, I think they've got their good players fit. Even Trossard was not fit, I think, for a long period of time, which is why they didn't have these good players playing for them. And they had the likes of Connolly playing for them, who's terrible. So yeah, I think this is also changed things for Brighton. Anybody interested in Maupay? Would you
No.
go there if they have the double?
He's a very frustrating player to own. I think there's so many
I
better
might
stock
go there.
options.
I might. I'm not sure. Sanchez is definitely is one I'm looking at in West End. If there's any chance that Lamptey is alive by game week 26, I might go there. I'm not sure
Yeah.
whether. I think that's highly unlikely. But yeah, I definitely look at potentially a double up if they have a double against Newcastle and West Brom.
I wish Solly March was a defender. I'd definitely go there. He's got some good underlying numbers. Unfortunate that he's classified as a midfielder. I think if he was a defender, I'd definitely go there.
Right.
Yeah, on Maupay, I think I might go there because he seems to me more certain of playing than Trossard, because Trossard, even when he's performing well, Potter seems to randomly drop him, which has been the case with Maupay as well in the past as well. But at least it's not as frequent as you notice with Trossard. But I really like Brighton. I think there are some great assets to be had.
Did you see
the double goes ahead?
Did you read Guardiola's comment? He said that Potter is the best English manager in the game right now.
That's high praise coming from Pep.
From Guardiola.
Yeah, whoever rolls over and gets beat by Guardiola is the best manager according to him, right? So that's
Brighton were actually pretty good against them. I saw that game. I remember Brighton dominated them in the second half.
That was the Sterling penalty, right? That's the one.
Yeah, the Sterling penalty game. Yeah. Brighton were actually kind of unlucky not to score. They played really well that game.
I think Brighton were unlucky to have Matt Ryan in goal in the past 2 seasons. Imagine if they had a decent goalkeeper.
Ryan was decent under Houghton. Let's not be unfair. He's just regressed a little bit, but he was decent. I think he was a decent FPL pick also.
Dude, I owned him last season and it was horrible. Like, I completely disagree with that. That was not a good experience.
Yeah, under Potter, he really got. I don't think, but what I remember about Ryan, right? He was so good for bonus. You remember that? Anytime they keep a clean sheet, just because of the passing.
Yeah.
He used to keep something.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. We're already over an hour, so let's move on to quickly now the fixtures. Next week's captaincy is quite interesting. What do you guys think?
It's Son versus Bruno for most. I personally like captaining midfielders. That's just my playstyle. Whenever there aren't too many obvious options around, I tend to go towards captaining the midfielder. At the moment, I'm on Bruno, given his form and the fact that Spurs have accumulated just like 0.45 XG in the 130 minutes they've played without Kane. And they haven't even looked like scoring. I know West Brom are atrocious and they've been conceding chances for fun. I've been writing about them for a while, and the fact how poor they've been, and we've discussed this so many times that we don't really feel that Big Sam has made too much of a difference defensively. But just given the security of Bruno, he's also on penalties. I might go with Bruno. I think unless we see something special from Son tonight.
Interesting goals. Let's just go fixture by fixture. Villa versus Arsenal. Let's quick scoreline check here. There's a lot of FPL interest in this one. I think Villa can get a win with the Arsenal goalkeeper position being a problem. What do you guys think?
Actually, I think it's going to be a 1-0. No, I think it's going to be a 2-1 victory for Arsenal. I think they've been playing really well. I actually rate Thomas Partey a lot as a player, and I think they might just have enough to beat Villa.
The Emi Martinez derby.
Yeah.
I'd go with the 1-1.
1-1?
Yeah.
Interesting. Burnley, Brighton, let's just skip that. Newcastle, Southampton. Fulham, West Ham. I think Antonio is a decent captain shout as well.
Yeah, outside captaincy shot, not too bad. I'd have gone there for sure if it was West Ham at home. But I saw the Leicester Fulham game where Fulham played on their home pitch, and that thin field can get tricky for opposition. And I think West Ham like to use their width. So that's one of the reasons I'm just a little worried about Antonio as a captaincy shout. But yeah, I see a Fulham victory here. Sorry, a West Ham victory here. 2-1 to West Ham.
Because I think Fulham have to go for it, right? Fulham have to absolutely go for it now this game.
That's a good point.
They have to throw everything against the wall after. So I think they will score in this game. I probably will bench Sufan. And I think this could be a high-scoring game, like a 3-1, 3-2, something like that.
Come on, Josh Maja. I want to see that.
Right. And then United, Everton. The reason why I'm not as keen on Bruno is that Everton have been actually pretty decent away from home. They won their last 4 matches on their travels, and he's like, he's back to playing Godfrey in defense and all that stuff. when they want to be stubborn, Everton can actually be quite stubborn. It's when they have to score and take the game to the opposition is when they struggle.
Agree with you. I'm not very, very hot on Bruno at the moment as a captain.
I think it's
This
a
is,
one.
this is something I've noticed as well. Everton haven't lost in their past 6 away games, and they've scored in every single game in the past 6 away games. So yeah, their away form is decent. That's the only reason I'm not so sure about Bruno. But yeah, this could be like a 2-1. I'd probably go 2-1 to United.
Yeah, I'm going for the 2-0 now. Spurs, West Brom. I think we can all agree that West Brom are comfortably the worst team in the league.
Agreed. No
Yeah,
debate
no
there.
debate there.
So it's all about, like, you know what, and I think Sonny is obviously still a good pick. Let's see what happens today. But I think irrespective of, I think let's say they lose tomorrow, which I hope is what happens. I think that makes him an even better pick for Sunday, don't you think?
Also, my thing is today can be quite deceptive because I think the system Mourinho might have in play today and the system that Mourinho is going to have in play against West Brom are going to be completely different.
Absolutely agree.
And he might have an extra defender or two on the field against Chelsea, who are going to dominate possession, and Mourinho is going to look to counter. And against Spurs, against West Brom, I won't be surprised. He threw a little bit of a teaser when it comes to talking of Dele Alli. I won't be surprised if he gives this game to Dele, because Mourinho is realizing that he needs a little more creative impetus in his team, and Bergwijn isn't exactly cutting it, and Bale isn't doing the job either. So, he might throw in the likes of Vicinius and Dele Alli in this game against West Brom. So that's why it's an intriguing fixture, that West Brom game, because I don't think you can read much about what's going to happen in that game based on what happens
Today.
tonight. So,
Yeah, I think 2-0 or 3-0 to Spurs.
I agree. I think they'll be comfortable victors against West Brom.
Right. Now, the next one is probably, I think we should spend a little bit more time on Liverpool, Man City. Now, this is a tricky one for all of us with this double, triple City defense, right? What are you guys doing with your City defenders this week? Bakar?
Sorry, I have Cancelo and Stones. I'm at the moment I am playing Cancelo because of his attacking threat. I'm benching Stones, not necessarily because I'm very certain of the fact that Liverpool will score, but I think I own Dyer as well, so I think Dyer at home to West Brom, I've got to play him, right? So that's one of the reasons I'm benching him. I'm not exactly averse to the idea of benching starting double City defense this week. I personally think this could be a 0-0. I won't be surprised if this was a 0-0. I can see this being a very tight game. If my advice would be to managers who own Cancelo to definitely start him, given his attacking numbers and the fact that City, how many clean sheets have they kept? They've only conceded once in 13, 14 Premier League games.
And that was also a rubbish goal against Chelsea in the last minute, if you remember that.
Yeah.
Robbie just gave the
I had
goal.
double defense, and that was very
Same. Last minute that goal was conceded. So yeah, go on.
And Liverpool at home have been poor. I noticed that their away numbers of late have been far better to their home numbers. So this is something as well that's worth considering. I'd probably go with a 0-0.
Zoff, do you have any problems playing your City defenders?
I'm planning to play only one. I'll probably be playing Cancelo and benching Diaz. My other two defenders are Dyer and Maguire, who have decent fixtures themselves. So I think that's the play there. But for you, it's a bit more interesting, right? You have triple City defense. So why don't you tell us?
I'm not really worried. My other option is to play Target against Arsenal, and I expect Arsenal to score against Villa. So I'm playing my triple City defense. I'm playing Mo Salah, and it is what it is. These games generally are more tighter than they aren't. I don't see Liverpool scoring more than one goal based on how City have absolutely dominated the opposition. And people who are worried about City and their defenders after this game, I think they're going to walk their opponents in the next few games. I'm not worried about a clean sheet against Spurs. I'm not worried about a clean sheet against United. I think this is the game I'm worried about in terms of clean sheet. And that also, I don't see Liverpool scoring more than one goal because it's going to be a very, very tight game. And these two teams tend to just cancel out each other. They don't take many risks against each other. So I don't think it's a big problem to play our City defenders.
I hope Guardiola is more aggressive this time.
He doesn't need to be, right? Because if anybody needs to be aggressive in this game, I think it's Klopp, because he's the one behind.
Leeds points.
I think, yeah, Guardiola will be very happy to take a draw in this game, in my opinion. That's why I don't expect him to go for it.
Interesting. I thought maybe with Liverpool's defensive frailties, he might fancy this time because he's traditionally, in fact, set up quite cagey when he's gone to Anfield in the past. But it's a very different Anfield now without the crowd and the whole the fear factor is completely gone from Liverpool.
Exactly. And then it's okay. You just trust that they're the best team, best defense in the country. And if Liverpool scores a goal, fair enough. Just take it on the chin. You're in the double up, triple up for City in the long term, not just one game week. It's okay. And I still like the chances of a clean sheet against Liverpool.
And then let's just cover one more fixture, Leeds Palace. I think Bamford is also a decent captaincy shout here.
He's the one I'm interested in as an outside captaincy shout because I think Leeds have been finding their feet. They're playing pretty well. I don't think Palace have looked that good at the moment. So he's the one I'm interested in.
And I think Zaha is out again.
Yeah.
And also, I think Bielsa is going to remember, I think Palace beat them 4-1 in the reverse fixture. So I think they're going to be out there to get a little bit of revenge. I quite fancy Bamford as a captaincy shot.
Yep. Right. So let's move on now to our individual teams. Pranal, you're up first.
All right, just taking you guys through my team for the benefit of the listeners. As my keeper, I have Martinez. In defense, I've got the triple city defense. I've got Target, who I'm probably going to bench. I've got Salah. I've got Son, who's my captain at the moment, but that can change. I've got Fernandes. I've got Barnes. I've got Calvert-Lewin and Bamford as my strikers. Now I've got 4.5 million in the bank, and I'm going to upgrade one of Burke, Davies or Mitchell. At the moment, my planned transfer is Davies to Antonio. But I'm wildcarding in 2 weeks, very likely. So I can take a punt. If Chelsea shows something today, Pulisic shows something today, I'm willing to go there. I'm willing to roll the dice. Because I feel like if you know you're going to wildcard in the next 2 game weeks, it facilitates a few gambles and I'm happy to take them.
You're the most barren bench I've seen.
Yep.
I like you didn't even mention them when walking through your team.
Yeah. Burke, Mitchell, Davies. Absolutely nothing to talk about there.
That's a breeze. So, like you said, you're basically holding a transfer this week, right?
Yeah. Also, that's one of the reasons why I'm looking to wildcard in 25, right? Because if I need to be bench boost in 26, I need to spend 4 transfers on these guys. And my starting 11 isn't exactly ideal as well. So the more I look at my team, the more I think about it, I'm very likely to wildcard in Game Week 25.
Yeah, you're a bit lopsided in terms of triple city defense. Then in your Villa, you have your double defense and Davis.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
agree. Wildcard, I think, will suit your team very well.
Exactly. And I'm not too happy. I'm not too sad about the triple city defense and the double Villa defense. I think they've kept huge amount of clean sheets in the past few game weeks. I was happy, but I think that time is going to change now, which is why I'm willing to wildcard in 25.
I agree because I think with Laporte back, I think the whole City defense picture is also going to change a little bit.
Yeah. And I can't believe we've not spoken about Gundogan. I thought he was again unlucky to not get more in that game against Burnley as well. I'm such a huge fan. He's probably my favorite player in the league this season. He's playing such good football. Like I tweeted about every pass he makes, his pressing, his spatial awareness, his shooting, it's absolutely world class at the moment. Who knew there was this player? And in FPL aside, he's just such a joy to watch at the moment. I think he's City's best player at the moment, and just
I agree.
need to get him in the team.
Speaking about how unlucky Sterling's owners were, I mean those chances that Sterling missed, the one-on-one that was saved by Pope, that was created by Gundogan. Gundogan could have even had a bigger haul.
Yeah, he's a bonus
much bigger
points
haul.
machine, right? I think he's doing very well for bonus as well.
Yeah, created 5 chances against Burnley. 2 of them were big chances. So he always tends to do well for bonus. So that's what suits him.
Right. Your team up next, Bakar.
Sure. So I have Martinez in goal, Cancelo, Dyer, Robertson, Son, Gundogan, Salah, Fernandes, Souček. I'm playing Souček this week. Watkins,
Disaster.
Antonio. On my bench, I have Stair, Calvert-Lewin, Stones, and Kilman. So I'm looking to sell Robertson for Shaw this week. That's my planned transfer. I am fairly sure I'll be going there. The only other alternative I have is perhaps if any of the Chelsea wingbacks tonight show some form, Alonso in particular. Other than that, I'm pretty set on my move. The main conundrum for me is going to be the captaincy. I'm on Fernandes at the moment, but I'm not as set. And it's going to be something I look at into more detail.
I think we
But
might have talked you
at the
into
moment, I'm
going
55,
Son.
45 on Fernandez. Sorry?
I think we might have talked you into leaning a little bit towards Son.
Yeah, I think before we spoke, I was like 65, 35 on Fernandez. Now I'm 55, 30, 45. So it's just something I'll probably make a late call on.
But Bakar, what happens if you start Suchik and he scores a goal? I think there was a little bit of a video that was.
Interesting question. I think I'll probably dance my ass off like I did in that video you have of mine the other night.
Yeah, I think you need to post that video on Twitter, not just on Instagram. Bakar attended a wedding this weekend, and there was a little bit of a video. And he's got some good moves under his belt, and I think you need to post that on Twitter. If Suchek is playing and he scores a goal for you.
Bakar's hips
All
don't
right,
lie.
deal. We have a deal.
We have a deal. Nice.
If
I'm going to
Suchek's-
cheer for Suchek this game.
I'll do a similar dance again.
Okay.
No. You post that video. I think that's a good video.
All right,
I
sure.
was going to convince him right now to start DCL over Suchek, but I think now I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
I mean, I think the world needs to see that video.
Right.
Absolutely. So,
Zoff for your team.
Yeah.
just go on there. Martinez in goal, Dyer, Cancelo, and Maguire in defense. Salah, Bruno, Gundogan, Son, Suchek midfield. Bamford, Antonio up top. On the bench, Foster, DCL, Diaz, and Sufa. Would you guys
Nice
change?
team.
Would you guys change anything in the bench order? Anything? I don't think so. I think the team picks itself, right? I mean, DCL could score, obviously, but I think I got to back the other guys to do better.
And maybe have your defenders ahead of DCL on the bench.
Diaz
Probably
ahead
just
of
that.
DCL, right?
Yeah, probably just that.
Yeah, probably just that. But I think that most of these guys should start anyway.
Yeah, and I can see why you don't want to wildcard in 25. You've got a very strong bench at the moment, so I can completely see why you don't need to wildcard in 25.
I agree with you. I'd be tempted to play Soufal over Maguire though.
Fair shot.
I'm not so sure because again I think Fulham really have to go for it. I think you'd back Fulham to one. United have been posting good defensive numbers. Maguire's been decent for me. I think since I got him, he's kept like 3 or 4 clean sheets, got decent bit of goal threat. I don't mind playing Maguire. I'm a big Harry fan, as you know from the first podcast.
Yeah. If United lose to West Ham in the FA Cup, you're laughing. Your bench boost is set already, so
Exactly.
yeah.
So let's have a look how that goes. But that would make things tricky, right? If United don't have a double in 26, what do we do with Bruno? Because he's going to be so expensive to buy back. So that would make things quite interesting.
Yeah, because we need so much money this season.
I think we will eventually, though, right? Not right now, but when there is going to be at a point, I think, when we are going to be 0.1 short of what we need. So it always happens. Right. Let's move on.
I'm just worried though because I think the title race is going to be over pretty early this season. I think the relegation battle is going to be over pretty early this season. So I'm a little worried about motivation of teams in the last 6 or 7.
That was why I was saying keep the wild card for that time. Identify the teams with motivation, right? Let's move on to the Q&A.
All right. How much time do we have, Zoff? Accordingly, just
we have 7-8. We can go through it. We're about 75 minutes in.
All right, cool. The first question, I'll take this one on. It's from Mihir Kaslikar. Good defender options, barring the City ones. We've spoken a lot about the defenders. I think number one player to go through is Luke Shaw. And outside of that, the options worth considering are Dean, Rudiger, and the Brighton Hove Albion options. If Alonso starts today again, then it's a good one to go for. The next question is for you, Zoff. It's from Ayush. Is it time to replace City defenders?
Absolutely not. I think if you've got 3, then maybe I can see the appeal of losing 1 maybe to get an attacker in. But if you've got 2 and you like getting points, then I guess not.
Yeah, this is a very strange question.
Yeah, I think by far the most reliable defense.
I mean, you guys know I've been singing the praises from game week 8, game week 9, right? So I've been on this.
I think you were on the double earliest out of all the people.
Zoff was far ahead of the curve.
Yeah, yep, the City double. All right, I think all 3 of us can take this on. What's your plan moving forward with the upcoming double for City and Everton? Should we bring 3 players from each if you have your wildcard available? I think all 3 of us have City triple and DCL. Are you looking to add to that in terms of Everton players?
Maybe Dean, but nobody else.
Bakar?
I don't think I'll be adding Dean. I don't think there's a clean sheet in the next 3. Personally, they have United away this week, then they have Liverpool coming up as well. Fulham,
no, just for the double.
Yeah, for the double as well. I mean, Fulham and City are definitely going to score. That's like a 0 or a 1 pointer probably. I don't think I'd go towards
Yeah,
Dean.
you
I'd
could see a
probably not.
single game week player even outscoring Dean that week potentially, right?
Yeah, I mean, if Richarlison picks up some kind of form, I might punt on him instead.
James, no?
No, he got dropped last night, so I don't know
Yeah, he can get benched in a
what's up with
congested
that.
schedule. I wouldn't be surprised if he benches him away to City, then plays him to Fulham or things
I
like
think
that.
it was more of a tactical move given Hammers' play style and how Leeds play. I think it was more to do with the fact that he wanted someone on the wing, and he wanted to play 4-3-3 rather than 4-2-3-1.
Right.
Just out of curiosity, the City game week looks like Spurs at home and Everton away. Who's your likely captain for that game week in 24?
Gundogan?
Yeah,
Gundogan?
I think Gundogan, Cancelo
Cancelo?
maybe, but like Cancelo, I don't
Sterling?
trust him now. That
Sterling,
Pep
yeah,
is now.
Sterling obviously I think is a good shot. I think we have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
favor an
Sterling obviously.
attacker, but I'd actually like Diaz over Cancelo.
All right. As just go for the 2 clean sheet play.
Absolutely,
Nail down
like
Bruno.
because Cancelo, it's going to be a risk, right? With game time, his potential is high. We've seen, but he could also get subbed early. I think against Burnley, he got subbed up at like what 63, 64.
Yeah, I
What would you
mean,
do in my position with Triple City in 24? Would you shift one out and get an attacker, or just hold the Triple City defense?
I'd get an attacker for sure.
I'd get the attacker because
Yeah, I think
Gundogan
I'm
looks
looking
very
to punt
secure.
on Sterling.
See, I'm still not as sold on Sterling because the game time risk always worries me. I like Gundogan. I think look at the underlying numbers; it's very similar in terms of what they can achieve. In terms of minutes, Gundo's way more secure.
I like Gundo more, but I don't really think that Sterling's a bad pick.
It's a 1 week pick for me because I'm wildcarding in 25. Right? So
Right.
it's a
As a
1 week
1 week pick is pretty decent. The ceiling is quite high.
pick. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the only thinking that I have in my mind. Any idea when Kev is back?
I don't think anytime I think he said a few weeks away. So I think probably like we're in like probably end of February, I'd guess. Pure guess.
Next question is from Pierre. I'm going to answer on the behalf of all three of us. And he says he's sick of Salah. He cannot get his alls, and there are not many of them right now. Sell him? Absolutely not.
No.
Next question is from Samir Sharma. Game week 22, Salah versus Brighton was a blank. Game week 21, Gundogan versus Sheffield United was a blank. And game week 20, Fernandes versus Sheffield United was a blank. The last 3 game weeks saw blanks with the most tipped captain picks. Is it time to take risks and trust your gut instead of going with the most sensible picks? What do you guys have to say?
I think you just go with like I don't think I went with any of these picks purely because they're the most sensible picks. I honestly thought they were going to score the most points. That's why I picked them.
Bakar, anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with Zoff. Nothing more to add from me.
Yeah, I think it's all right to go. I've always said this, if you're going against the grain, I quite like what Zoff told me in a separate chat, where it's nice to trust a premium option who's getting ignored for a double game week. I think the tide is going to flip to, especially if Son blanks today, I think Bruno's going to see a 150% effective ownership in the next game week, and that's a good time to zag if you think Everton are going to have a good defense. So opportunities like this are what you should look for, and it's always good to ensure yourself by having the highest owned player in your team. So you're not completely you're ensuring yourself. That's all. The next question is from Luke, FPL devotee. Following your gut instinct or getting influenced by other managers' moves? I would really appreciate if you guys can share your opinion on this topic. Zoff?
I mean, we always discuss that, like, ultimately, that's what we also do. We get a lot of RMTs and questions on Twitter. Should I play this? Should I buy this? Should I buy B or C? And this is what we say to everyone is that we only put the information out there. Ultimately, you guys have to make the own decisions that suits your play style and suits what you are looking for from the game. Certain guys, they just don't get the thrill. There's a good friend of ours, Champ, who always used to pick these left field picks because he just merely said, I don't get the thrill if the guy who everyone else owns. Also, it all depends on what you want from the game, right? We are only putting the information out there. We're not forcing it down anyone else's throats.
And I'll just say that there's no point to playing this game if you're not backing your instinct. I think the most joy you can get from this game is by backing your instinct. As long as you're not going batshit crazy, back your instinct. I mean, I've gotten a lot of grief for sticking by Timo Werner for a long time. I just hate the player and I just enjoy the game a lot more because I'm backing my instincts. That's all there is to it. Next question is from Sambhav Bhirani. Bakar, why don't you take this one? He wants a differential captain if he doesn't bring in Son this week.
I'd probably go with Antonio. I think West Ham are gonna do they're gonna do well against Fulham. I think Antonio is the one, given his numbers.
All right. Next question is from friend of the pod, AK underscore FPL1, who's having a great season, by the way. What's he at right now? 20K?
Yeah, I think it's the top 20, top 30K, something like that.
Nice. Congratulations, AK, on the season. Madison versus Barnes. I'll answer this question because I own Barnes in the past 2 game weeks, so I've been watching that game with a tunnel vision. And what I've seen is Madison is definitely closer to the goal than he used to be. I remember we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago as well, where we said that if Vardy is not playing, will Madison play closer to the goal? And I think this has definitely been happening. Even on the counter, he's very close to goal. Barnes gets a lot of shots at the moment, but if I had to pick between the two today, I'd pick Madison. I think his game has changed and he's playing a lot closer to the goal.
Yeah.
You think that tactic changes once Vardy comes back?
I think in general, Madison is playing a lot further up. He referenced the comments made by Carragher and all that stuff, right? He's trying to add more to his direct goal output. And then you have set pieces and all that stuff. I don't think it's like a very clear-cut call, to be honest. It could be, I think it might be a case of just like, pick one and stick. If you have Barnes now, there's no point really switching to Madison. But what we've seen really in the last few matches probably would lean us towards Madison, I think, more so than Barnes.
Next question is from FPL Mackin. Both of you can answer this. He's looking for a McCarthy replacement as a keeper. Any suggestions?
I think
we don't really talk about keepers on the pod. So
I think Pope is a decent shout. I'd expect Burnley to go Pope or Martinez.
Exactly. His fixtures are great, actually. Brighton, Crystal Palace, West Brom in the next 3. I mean, they scream points to me, honestly. Other than that, I mean, Crystal Palace's fixtures aren't too bad either. I think Gaita can be a decent shout. They've got Burnley, Brighton, Fulham, West Brom, and 4 of the next 6. Brighton, we've already talked about. They have
Carlos Sanchez cheap also.
4.5. Sanchez is a good one.
If I was picking one, I'd probably go with Sanchez, given his double and Brighton's numbers. I think he could be one you could hold through a long term. Personally, given with goalkeepers, you'd like to hold them for a period of games, or for the long term rather than for the mid to short term. So I'd go with Sanchez, given his numbers.
Right. And that's it for the questions from us this week. Any last words, boys? Anything to add, Bakar?
No, thank you for watching and thank you for the support as always.
And like and subscribe.
Yes, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. And thank you again for just getting us to the 10K number. We're very, very happy about that. And just a small note, we will not be podding next Tuesday. We will be podding same time next week because we'll be waiting for the FA Cup results. And then talking about the double game weeks when we have more news. So see you on the other side and good luck this game week. Take care.
Good luck, everyone.
Good luck.